Hello, welcome to the Unit 6 test review. Let's get started. Alyssa buys a shirt for $29 plus 4% sales tax. Her BFF Tiffany buys a shirt for $22 plus 8% sales tax. And then we have a bunch of questions to answer. The first one is how much did Alyssa pay for her shirt including tax? Then how much did Tiffany pay for her shirt including tax? And then who spent more on tax? So let's go ahead and solve these. First, I'm going to do Alyssa in green. So her shirt was $29. And then you have to add in the 4% sales tax. So let's figure out what 4% of $29 is. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to change it to a decimal. Since I don't always remember things very well, when I look at the percent sign, notice in the percent sign there's 2 dots. That reminds me to move my decimal 2 times. So 4% can be rewritten as 0.04. So I'm going to figure out the tax. I'm going to do 29 times 0.04, and I get $1.16. That's just for tax for Alyssa. Now, if I want to figure out her total cost, I need to go back and I need to do 29 plus that. So I'm going to do 29 plus the tax. I don't really know why I'm typing this in the calculator, but I'm just a creature of habit. So, $29 plus $1.16 is $30.16. So that's what she spent total. That was the total price of her shirt. Now let's go over here and let's do some work for her BFF. All right, so Tiffany, I thought I changed colors. Let's try that again. Tiffany spent $22 plus 8% tax. So first thing we're going to do is figure out the tax. We're going to take our 8% and we're going to move the decimal 2 times. And then we're going to multiply that by the original. So 22 times 0.08. And I find out that she spent $1.76 on tax. And now I'm going to go figure out the total price of her shirt by adding the original 22 plus the tax. And it's going to be $23.76 total. So let's see what we've answered so far. Part 1 says how much did Alyssa pay for her shirt? So this is the answer for part 1. Part 2, how much did Tiffany pay for her shirt, including tax? That would be the answer for part 2. And then question 3 we haven't done yet. Question 3 says who spent more on tax? So we're just analyzing tax. She spent $1.16 on tax. She spent $1.76 on tax. So Tiffany actually spent more on tax. Even though her shirt was less money, she spent more on the tax. All right. Write the fraction 3/7 as a percent. Round to the nearest hundredth of a percent when necessary. So I like to do this in my calculator. So I'm going to type it in exactly how it looks. 3/7. You could also do 3 divided by 7 if you want to. But that gives me this number. 0.42, all of that. All right. I want to write that as a percent and round to the nearest hundredth. So let me go ahead and write that back on our notebook. So all I've done so far is write down what the calculator told me. Now that's the decimal answer, but it doesn't say write 3/7 as a decimal. It says to write it as a percent. And remember, when we deal with percents, we need to move the decimal 2 times. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move it 1, 2 places. So now I'm going to rewrite this as 42.8571426, but it says round to the nearest hundredth. So whenever you're rounding, you always ask yourself, how many zeros is that? So in 100, we have 2 zeros, which means we want to go to the second decimal place. So the second spot after the decimal is the hundredth spot, and we need to look at the number behind it. If it's 5 or greater, that's going to make your spot go up 1. If it's less than 5, then it's going to stay the same. So because I'm looking at 7, 7 is greater than 5, that's going to make this 5 go up to a 6. So 42.86%. Write the decimal as a percent. So we're going to a percent, which means we have to move the decimal twice. So 1, 2. So it would be 83.6%. A survey at your school found that 783 in 1,000 students have a cell phone. What percentage of the students in the school have a cell phone? All right, so we're looking for the percent. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a fraction out of what I know. 738 out of 1,000. And then I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to figure out what that is as a decimal. So 738, oops, fraction button, there we go. 738 over 1,000. And it equals 7.738. So let's write that in our notebook. Sorry, I'm just writing this down, but my computer froze. Okay, so when I put it in my calculator, that turned it into a decimal. But that's not our final answer because it doesn't want to know what it is as a decimal. It wants to know what it is as a percent. So we need to move that decimal 2 places. 73.8% would be our final answer. Write the percent 10.34% as a decimal. All right, so now we have 10.34 and it's already in percent form and we want to turn it into a decimal. Now this confuses a lot of people because there's already a decimal in it, but when we change a percent, we want to move it 2 times. So before, on this last problem, we had a decimal and we were changing it to a percent, so we moved it 2 times to the right. We're going to do the exact opposite. Here we already have it as a percent. We want to turn it into a decimal, so we're going to move it 2 times to the left. So I'm going to move it 1, 2, and I'm going to get 0.1034 as a decimal. There's no longer a percent sign on it because it is now a decimal. Mr. Clark and 3 of his friends go out to lunch. The total bill comes to $87.24. They decide to leave a 15% tip. Each person will contribute an equal amount to the total tip. Estimate what each person should contribute. Okay, so we need to figure out what 15% of this bill would be. So we're going to take our total amount of the bill and we're going to multiply it by 15%, but not with the percent sign. We're going to change that percent to a decimal by moving it twice. So we're going to multiply that by 0.1. Hang on, let me get an eraser. My brain is not doing what I want it to do. So we're going to change that to 0.15. And that's just calculator work. So type it in your calculator. 87.24 times 0.15. When I multiplied that, it told me that the tip, remember I'm just solving for tip right now, would equal 13.086. Now we're dealing with money here. Well, hang on, we'll round in just a minute. We are going to round though, because you don't have, money is always written in the hundredths place, not the thousands. And then it says each person will contribute an equal amount to the total tip. So we're trying to figure out what the total tip for each person should be. We have Clark and 3 friends. That is 4 people total. So we're going to take this tip amount and we're going to divide it by 4. And when I did that, I got 3.2715. So this is what each person's going to pay, but this doesn't make sense as a dollar amount. So remember, in dollar amounts, you only have 2 decimal places. So we look at the number behind it. That 1 is going to make that stay the same. So each person should contribute about $3.27 towards the tip. Oh, and also on this one, if you have an Apple Watch and you want to know how to do all of this fancy stuff on an Apple Watch, let me know. I'll show you how to do it all. It's really cool. It's a really cool feature. All right, this one. Use a proportion to solve the problem. All right, so we want to know what 56% of 83 is. So I probably, honestly, if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't use a proportion, but since it tells us to use a proportion, we need to go ahead and do that. So we know in proportions we have 2 fractions that we set equal. The first fraction I'm going to let be my percent fraction. So I have 56%, and the total percent is always 100. So 100 would always be on the bottom of a percent fraction. And then we want to know of 83, Okay, y'all, I have a confession to make. I'm totally messing up this proportion and I can't figure out why. So I'm not going to use a proportion to solve this. Remember when I said I probably wouldn't use a proportion to solve it? What I would do in this problem is I would take 56% of 83, and of means times 83. So I'm going to turn this percent to a decimal and then I'm going to multiply it. So I'm going to move it 2 times. 0.56 times 83, and let's see, 0.56 times 83 is 46.48. So 56% of 83 is 46.48, which is just a little bit over half. Sorry, I'll have to think about how to do a proportion and get back to you about that. 77 is what percent of 195? So when I read this, I'm just going to write out an equation with it, or an expression with it. 77, that's the first thing I'm going to write down. 77 is means equals, is what percent. So that's what I'm trying to solve for. I'm trying to figure out what percent. So I'm just going to write it as X percent. Of means multiply 195. So I just wrote out what it says as a sentence into a math equation. 77 is what percent of 195? And then I'm going to go through and solve this equation. So since I'm timesing by 195, the opposite would be to divide by 195 on each side. And let's see, 77 divided by 195 is 0.39. Uh-oh, I'm running out of room. 0.39487, yada, yada, yada. And that's the decimal, but I want to know what it is as a percent. That's kind of why I put that little percent sign there to remind me that I want to change that into a percent. So I'm going to move the decimal twice. And it would become 39 point, let's round it to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to look at this one behind it. It's going to be 49%. So 77 is about 40% of 195. While walking outside on a field trip, 34% or 34 of the students in the class wore jackets. Find the number of students in the entire class. So there's lots of different ways to approach this problem. The first one that came to me is just writing out the equation. So 34% or 34 students of the class wore jackets. Find the number of the entire class. So I'm going to say 34% of the entire class wore jackets, but I don't know how big the entire class is. So 34% of the total class, I'm just going to let it be X. X is going to be the total class. 34% of the total class equals 34 students. And then I'm going to solve this like an equation, but first I'm going to get rid of the percent sign. I'm going to change that to a decimal. So 0.34 times X equals 34. Since I'm trying to get X by itself, I need to divide each side by 0.34. And 34 divided by 0.34 is 100. So that means the total class has 100 students in it. For a lot of you, I don't know about you, but when I read that question, without even setting up and solving math, I could tell the answer was going to be 100. Because 34% or 34 students, I just know that has to be a total of 100 students because those are the same number. So I'm almost out of time. I'm going to try to get through this one. During the baseball season, Tiffany was up to bat 70 times and struck out 30% of the time. How many times did she strike out? All right, so I'm going to change that 30% to a decimal. And then I'm going to multiply it by 70 because she went up 70 times total. And 70 times 0.3 is 21. So she struck out 21 times. We're not going to have time to get to the last two questions. This one we kind of, if you need to refer back, go back to question 1, and that'll show you how to do the tax on everything. And for this one, what percent of 60 is 23? That one you would have to multiply. If you need help on that one, come see me. Otherwise, good luck on your test retake. The work shown for this question, you can pause it if you need to look over it.